Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us for the first evening in with Just Imagine of this academic year. And I'm really thrilled that for our first event, we're going to be chatting with Lucy Strange and Pam Smy. For those of you that haven't attended one of our events before, we do hope to have time at the end for question and answer, and I will be opening the Q&A facility partway through this event, so please do look out for that and pop your questions in there. I am especially excited about the event this evening because I hold both the writer and the illustrator of the Lockett and Wilde mystery series in high esteem. Lucy was a former teacher. We were talking earlier about when she gave up being a full-time teacher. She's now a full-time writer. And when her first book, The Secret of Nightingale Wood, was published in 2016, I remember feeling that this was an exciting new voice that had arrived on the children's literature scene. Since then, she's delighted us with spookily mysterious writing in a wonderful classic storytelling voice. Stories such as The Ghost of Goswater, Sisters on the Lost March, and her highly acclaimed novellas for Barrington Stoke, which include The Boy at the Window, The River Spirit, and The Mermaid in the Mill Pond. And indeed, those titles were illustrated by Pam Smy, but I'm sure Lucy and Pam will tell you about how their collaboration came to be. Pam Smy is an absolute wonder when it comes to the illustration of children's books, and many of you, I'm sure, know that she spent 20 years teaching at the Cambridge School of Art, both on the BA in children's book illustration and the MA. And I can't quite remember, I'm pretty sure she was the course director of the MA, but I'm sure she'll correct me if I have got that wrong. I'm sure you know Pam's highly illustrated novels, Thornhill and The Hideaway, which were published by David Fickling. But we have got a lot to get through in our 45 minutes together. So without further ado, I would like to welcome Pam and Lucy to an evening with Just Imagine. Hello, both of you. Pam, was it the MA that you were director of?
Oh, so you've promoted me, Nikki. I've only just been a senior lecturer, and the course is run by amazing Shelley Jackson, who's come over from the States. She's been running for about 6 years. So I was just there as a full-time member of staff.
Can I just apologise to
No?
Shelley? But because you are such high profile at places like Bologna and for your support of young and up and coming illustrators, you've always held that position in my eyes.
Thank you. That's really kind of you.
So it's really interesting, this story of how you came to work together, quite untypical of how writers and illustrators are put together. And we spend the first 10 minutes with you, Pam and Lucy, perhaps just reminiscing on what that process was. And I'm not going to interfere with that because I'd just like to hear it from the two of you.
Yeah, that's great. It's really interesting, isn't it, Lucy? Because I've often said to students or people who are just interested in the industry generally that it's the publisher who usually is matching the author and the illustrator together, and sometimes they don't even meet at all. And yet for us, we'd both already worked on The Mermaid in the Mill Pond.
Oh, you've got a copy there. Well done. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so we worked with Barrington Stoke. In fact, actually, Barrington Stoke had asked me if I had any preferences on illustrators, and again, that's quite unusual.
Yes.
And I knew your wonderful Thornhill, and so I did mention you, Pam, and then it all worked out so beautifully. But yeah, so it doesn't normally happen like this, does it? And so we'd worked on The Mermaid in the Mill Pond together. We did one other Barrington Stoke, which is this one, The Storm and the Minotaur, but that happened a little bit after, didn't it? Yeah, but I love Pam's work so much. And I felt that frustration that we hadn't actually got to meet in person. So we ended up having lunch in Canterbury, didn't we?
We did, yeah. I whipped down on the train and we
Yeah,
drank. We had a nice lunch and pink prosecco, I remember.
we did.
And
We did.
and it was nice to get to meet, but also just to talk about the kind of work that we had done, the kind of work that we wanted to do, and different ways that we would want to stretch ourselves creatively, I think.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
we were trying to brainstorm as we met ways in which we might be able to collaborate
yeah,
whilst still, breaking away from what we were known for doing and trying something a bit new. So there was a
yeah,
bit of
yeah.
back
I
and
think
forth afterwards, wasn't there?
there was what afterwards.
A bit of back and forth between us
There were,
afterwards.
oh yeah, 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 yeah. No, I think we were both really conscious of that because both got a love of the Gothic, in literature and in art, and uh, we wanted to build on that and what we have in common as creators, and we wanted to create something that I think had a really broad appeal for young readers. I was really aware, when it's my novels I find are quite kind of, they're sort of book lover novels, like, so they're kids in sort of year 5 and 6 and up who are already really confident readers that tend to enjoy my novels. And then I'd have the pleasure of working with the brilliant Barrington Stoke as well, who are obviously so fantastic at making their stories super accessible. And we talked, didn't we, Pam, about something almost sort of in between, so that and something that was highly illustrated, because I think we see so many kids round about, I don't know, sort of 9, 10ish, and they're not ready for those just big prosy novels. And we wanted to bring the beauty and the richness that art can bring to a story, and actually allow it to do some of the storytelling. It's a sort of a hybrid. Is it a sort of a hybrid thing that we've done here with Lockett and Wilde?
Yeah, well, I think there has been a resurgence in more heavily illustrated fiction
Yeah,
in the last few years,
yeah,
and
which
I
is
think,
wonderful.
yeah, which is a relief to me. I remember being bereft as a child when
Yeah,
suddenly I wasn't allowed to look at things with pictures anymore, and I
yeah,
remember as a parent being heartbroken when my daughter got into year 4 and was told she couldn't read comics, And I think that thing about us having speech bubbles, a lot of illustration, double page spreads, wordless sequences, and the prose and the images all integrated together
yeah, yeah.
was
Telling
something
the
that
story
neither of us had tried
together.
before in to that extent, and that we thought would answer some of those
Yeah,
needs that we had identified.
yeah, I think so. But it wasn't Lockett and Wilde at the beginning, was it? They started. They
No,
started. They
so
started a bit differently.
so we made it was during lockdown that we were having these conversations, and we pitched to this, and it's a Strange and Smy. I got a little
Strange
rubber
and
stamp.
Smy,
Strange and
which we
Smy. So we were
decided, like, the combination of our names, we just thought was just too good, too good
yeah.
not to use, wasn't it?
Did we say it sounds like a good author pairing or really dodgy solicitors?
Yeah,
And
yeah. Solicitors.
so we made this little cast of
Pam made
characters.
Pam. I had this is entirely Pam's talent here. This gorgeous character concertina, and they were originally called Fig and Pickle.
Yep,
Matilda
yep.
Fig and Edgar Pickle.
There we go.
So this was
I
before they
love it.
became Lockett and Wild, and it was so beautiful. And then this got sent out by our agents
Yeah. We
to
also made this, Lucy. Do you remember? We actually pitched. We made a little booklet
yeah,
where we had
miniature book.
an opening sequence, a wordless
Yes,
opening
we did.
sequence. Oh, I'm going to go that way.
So this is the
And
first. This is the first Lockett and Wild book. This is the Ghosts of the
yeah,
Manor, as it
yeah,
became the Ghosts of the Manor.
it became a Ghost Manor. So we were. Oh, I'm in reverse. So we'd
No, that's
actually took this out, and you had written the opening chapters,
yeah.
and we were sending that
Yeah.
out.
Yeah.
Um,
I'd written
yeah,
the whole thing. I'd written the whole first draft at that point.
yeah,
But yeah, we sent out that first chapter as this beautifully bound little book. And that was how the story got how the series got bought by Walker.
yes,
And then we had the first Look at Wild came out in hardback last year, and then just come out in paperback, and looking absolutely gorgeous in paperback. And then next week, in exactly 1 week, the second one, The Ghosts of London, is out. And another part of our idea with it was also using the illustrations, because they're mystery stories. using the illustrations as part of the mystery. So there are clues hidden in some of the pictures as well. And the significance of the colour. So each book's got one key colour. And that kind of ties into the story as well.
I'm just going to hook back in for a moment. As I say, time is going to actually run away with us because we have so much to cover. Tell us when it stopped being Strange and Smy and it became Lockett and Wilde. Whose idea was that?
So, well, that was when it was quite some way under development with Walker, wasn't it? And I think it was a decision that actually that the Fig and Pickle that we loved so much just sounded like it was in that younger bracket, more the kind of sort of age 7-ish sort of bracket. And I think we both felt very, very strongly that we wanted this to be. We didn't want this book to end up on that shelf. We wanted this to be a book. Because there are plenty of brilliantly, gorgeously illustrated books for that age group, and we wanted this to be an offering for middle grade, but with the gorgeous artwork. So it was, So then we had to sort of set about finding new names,
which you did, Lucy, which is great.
It was a long process.
Sorry. It's just a small point, but it has to be Lockett and Wilde and not Wilde and Lockett. Actually, there is a discussion between the characters.
Yes, and they argue about that in the first book, yeah.
But from a writing point of view, why does it have to be Lockett and Wilde? Lockett and Wilde sounds right. Wilde and Lockett somehow doesn't.
No, it's it's one of those word sound things that's very hard to explain and define, isn't it? It's Lockett and Wilde, Wilde and Lockett. It'll be something to do with the syllable patterns and the stresses and how they fall, and it's probably something that Shakespeare could have explained far better than I can. But yes, it does sound better like that, doesn't it? And in this one, actually, in The Ghosts of London, so Matilda, Lockett and Edgar Wilde have set up Lockett and Wilde supernatural sleuths as their sort of supernatural detective agency. They've kind of got that going properly in this one. And in The Ghosts of London, Edgar's determined to come up with a slogan, something that rhymes with Lockett and Wilde. And it's much easier to rhyme Lockett and Wilde than it is to rhyme Wilde and Lockett.
We'd have to have a rhyme that had pocket, wouldn't it? I mean,
I think that your options are limited, yeah.
Well, I'm going to talk to you a little bit, Lucy, and we'll bring back Pam later. We've got a treat of looking inside her sketchbooks a little later on. But I'm going to send Pam to the green room where she can just put her feet up and relax for a little while.
Have a Prosecco, Pam.
So, Lucy, I wonder, before we get into talking more about the Ghosts of London, could you just set the story up for us?
So in the first book, in book 1, The Ghosts of the Manor, Matilda, who travels the country with this theatrical spirit medium show with her Aunt Evelyn, who performs as Signora Valentina and her Shadows of the Dead, and it's entirely fraudulent. Aunt Evelyn has no natural gift for calling the spirits. And then at the beginning of book 1, Matilda discovers she actually can hear and see and communicate with ghosts, and that's where the story starts. And they go to Beecham Manor. And Matilda, this is where Matilda meets Edgar Wilde for the first time, and he's a ghost boy, and so of course only she can see him. And together they investigate the mystery of the Beecham Blue Diamond and the dreadful haunting of the Folly at Beecham Manor. And then this story, the second book, The Ghosts of London, takes place after that, a couple of months later. And they are back in their lovely townhouse in London. Edgar is still a secret. Matilda has not told Aunt Evelyn and wonderful Uncle Barnabas, who's one of my favourite characters. She's not told them about him. They can't see him or hear him. So he's almost like a stowaway in the London house. And then in this story, Matilda starts to find out more about her real parents. And she discovers that her father, who she'd always believed to be part of the Signora Valentina's travelling fair, because his name was Geronimo Lockett. In her head, he's always been like a human cannonball or something like that. But she found out that he was actually an accountant in London. And she goes to poke around a little bit. She's curious about her parents and her history. And the old offices of Grab and Lockett, her father's accountancy firm, have now become a junk shop. And the junk shop, you may or may not be surprised to hear, is most dreadfully haunted. And I don't think I'll give any more away than that. Except that there's an old crime, a gold heist that's kind of tangled up with it as well.
We're going to come to Divine's Emporium in a little while, but I think maybe we should go straight to the reading, because you've got a very short reading for us that just sets up the tone of the book. So maybe we do that next.
Okay, I'll read you from chapter 1, in which rehearsals are not going smoothly. It was a dazzlingly bright winter's day in London. Sunlight bounced off the polished windows of tailors' shops and tea rooms, and the puddled pavements gleamed like gold. But within the walls of the Bloomsbury Square Theatre, it was very dark indeed. It was the sort of darkness you only get in theatres, the sort of darkness that wraps around you like a cloak, thick, velvety, and heavy with magic. The seats of the auditorium were empty. The only light came from a single candle standing on a table on the stage, where a new production was being rehearsed, a spirit medium show called Signora Valentina and Her Shadows of the Dead. The candle flickered, flashing on the sequined costume of Signora Valentina. She raised her arms aloft, tilting back her head. "Show us," she whispered dramatically. "Show us you are here." The candle moved. It wiggled. Then it rose up into the air and hovered just above Signora Valentina's head. She circled a hand around the candle to show there were no strings or wires. "This candle is being lifted by a ghost who haunts this theatre, the esteemed actor Sir Reginald Kemp, who accidentally impaled himself on his own sword and died on this very stage over 50 years ago." The candle moved again, further from Signora Valentina, out towards the edge of the stage and the empty auditorium. "Reginald Kemp is a rarity amongst ghosts. He is able to make real objects move. Such spirits are known as poltergeists." The candle suddenly flipped in the air, the flame spinning around on itself as it hurtled towards the front row of seats, where a pile of old theatre costumes had been deposited. A blonde wig promptly burst into flames, and Signora Valentina shrieked with fright. "House lights! Bring up the house lights!" she screamed. "Fire! Fire!" "It's all right, Aunt Evelyn," came a voice. A girl by the name of Matilda Lockett leapt from the wings of the stage, wearing a pair of reassuringly sturdy trousers and carrying a large metal bucket filled with sand. That's our little intro.
That sets us up really nicely, Lucy. Now, we all love a good ghost story. At least I love a good ghost story. And I've read many ghost stories that are set in the Victorian era, those classic ghost stories. You have chosen the 1930s.
I have.
Why?
Oh, it's a really good question. I think partly because they're not just ghost stories, they're mysteries. And I have been a lover of mysteries, murder mysteries, particularly all my life. I started reading Agatha Christie's probably when I was about 10, and it is the 1930s is very much the golden age of crime, of crime fiction, isn't it? So it's probably partly that. It was an interesting time. I find the interwar period very, very interesting anyway, but it was interesting in terms of the spirit mediumship and what people believed, and that had been huge at the end of the Victorian era, and it still had a huge amount of momentum. The interest in the paranormal in this way, but actually it was the 1930s that people started to be exposed as frauds, and the whole thing started kind of crumbling. And so for me, that was a really interesting time to have this touring theatre show, which is completely fraudulent. It's all smoke and mirrors. And I also think the characters, Uncle Barnabas, who I've mentioned who I have to limit my page time with because he's just too gorgeous, and I find myself writing funny lines for him. That's all I want to do, really. But he's kind of a hangover from like the Victorian music hall era, and again, it's just for me, the 1930s just brought all of those things together so perfectly.
It's interesting because there is a lot of looking back to the 1890s, but of course that's not such a long period of time between that and the 1930s. There would still have been remnants of those things, and one of the things in the Divine's Emporium is this doll who has
Yes,
inside her a wax phonographic
yes,
recording.
yes.
I've listened to some of those. You sent me down the
Yes.
rabbit hole. I went to
Oh,
listen to them on Wikipedia, and let me
they're
tell you, they
terrifying.
are seriously horrifying. And I thought,
Yeah.
this must be the origin of all those horror doll stories.
Yeah. So it's Edison. It was Edison's talking doll, I think, and they were sort of made of metal, and you could put a phonograph recording inside them so that they spoke, and of course the quality of the recordings was not good, so it came out as this shrill, like piercing, really, really, really sort of disturbing voice, which was not what you would want for a doll. There was nothing sort of cute and appealing about it whatsoever. So that I just loved that. And you're absolutely right. It's a rabbit hole of research, isn't it? You start going down that, and you're lost for days.
Mm. I mean, the dolls didn't take off, unsurprisingly, but I then started to think about some of the other technological advances, like Edison also came up with this phonograph, didn't he? Which people felt or believed captured the voices of the spirit world because it could capture things that the human ear couldn't hear.
Yeah, so that was one of the ideas that we play with in the story. That as far as Matilda's concerned, she is the only person who can hear the ghosts, and they discover in this story that actually the phonograph can record the ghostly voices that most people cannot hear. So this is part of an important part of the mystery, but then it also ends up being part of the stage show as well with Reg that we just met.
I do want to say, because talking about spooky dolls and phonographs, it could make it sound like this is a seriously chilling story, but actually the tone of it, there's a lot of humour in here. And I wondered if you could talk a little bit about how you create that balance between building atmosphere. There's a fantastic example of this in the chapter which describes Divine's Emporium. You go in there and there's this wonderful atmospheric description, and then we get Matilda shuddered and Edgar shuddered, and then there's this parakeet called Colin who just undercuts the whole thing, and you're laughing.
I
Tell
think
us
he
a little
starts
bit
singing
about
"Old
that.
MacDonald had a farm," doesn't he? Yeah. So it's been very, very important to me since the very, very start of this project that these books would be in terms of the tone and the atmosphere, which I'm really, really big on. That it should be three things: that it should be funny, it should be mysterious, and it should be spooky. It needed those were the three ingredients for me in terms of the tone and atmosphere. I wanted to do the mystery. I think is so important for gripping us, for drawing us in. We all love to solve the mysteries. It makes a story really interactive, doesn't it? And we wanted that spookiness. But we talked about how we would describe this tone, and we ended up coming up with cozy gothic. We want it to be cozy gothic because we wanted that warmth in there and that humor in there. So when we get to that point, I like to be able to tell parents and teach to reassure people that there's nothing that's going to give you nightmares in these books. They're spooky, but but then, as you say, like the humor undercuts or the warmth between the characters. So for me, it is a balance, but it's great fun to do, to kind of build up that tension, that dramatic tension, and that kind of sort of shivery fear, and then to bring in the humor as well. It's been a delight to write it. It's been so much fun.
I can see the time running away with us, and I want to talk about mood boards because I know that that's something that we've talked about that before with other books that you've written. I'd really love to look at the mood boards for this book, and I know you created a collaborative, a shared mood board
Yeah.
with Pam.
Yeah.
So let's have a quick look at that, and you can tell us
So
about some
the
of the
mood
things.
board, I mean, have a bit of a different purpose, really, because this is a collaboration. This whole series with Pam. So usually I would use mood boards. They help me to capture the atmosphere of a book and to hold the whole world of my story together. It's a visual way for me to do that when I'm working on a story, and I can get that tone bang on. And I use images to do that. With the Lockett and Wilde series, Pam and I needed a way of communicating and sharing images to make sure that we were on the same page, to make sure that it was going to be the same in our heads. So we've got a shared Pinterest page, and we both just kind of pile pictures into it. So I've picked out a few. This was from the first book. So you can see we've got the spookiness, like that bottom left picture of the graveyard that we've used there, but it's kind of a cartoony spookiness. And then we've got a parakeet there. We've got Colin, who brings in that kind of that brightness, that energy. That the he's quite rude in the first book. Actually, he's a lot of rude limericks. In the second book, he's nursery rhymes. He's reciting nursery rhymes. But the colour, the combination of colour, and we've got an old house, and we've got a folly. That's in the first one as well. Have you got the second one?
Yes.
Have we got the second?
There we go.
There we go. So yeah, so that's some of the images from the Ghosts of London, and we've got Larry Olivier there with his skull from Hamlet, sort of connecting to the spookiness of the Signora Valentina show in the theatre, and our character Reg there. Got a couple of the images duplicated. You can see sort of Colin in the theatre holding that together. One of my favourite images is this taxidermied fox, which
I know, and there is an image in the book that is spot on.
Pam has done it so brilliantly and so beautifully, bringing Divine's Emporium to life there. And it does need to be a spooky place and a sinister place. And Matilda says she feels like there are eyes, hundreds of eyes watching her. There's eyes in the dolls, eyes in these taxidermied creatures, and the eyes in mirrors and paintings and so on. But the humour of a really badly taxidermied animal, I think, is just, again, it helps to bring in that warmth and that silliness that balances the spooky flavour.
Well, I know that we've only scraped the thinnest bit off the surface there, Lucy, but we will have a chance, hopefully, for a few more questions at the end. But I'm going to bring Pam in to tell us a little bit more about the illustration. So you may go and rest in the green room now. Hi, Pam.
Hiya.
So, yes, so much to talk about with the illustration. We're going to have a look at some of them in a moment, and you're going to share your sketchbooks and tell us about those. One of the first things that I wanted to ask, a general question, was about the inspiration and whether you did much looking at 1930s illustration and that kind of offset printing of that period.
Yes, I'm really interested in that era of printing anyway, and also early Russian children's books where they had a really fantastic graphic sensibility. So I think it was really important to Lucy and I, when we were pitching it, that we found a publisher who was prepared to commit to the colour. I mean, it's more expensive for a publisher to do it. So we felt that it was important to bring that feeling across. And Lucy just talked about the mood boards, but also in terms of the look and feel of the illustrations, that there was that kind of hint of illustrations past, as well as the colour coding for the mysteries themselves.
And that also, we'll see in a moment because we'll see the illustrations, but that also feeds into the way that some of the dialogue is presented. Those speech balloons are so they're not modern speech balloons, they're speech balloons of the 1930s or earlier. The typography as well of the chapter headings. I wondered if you had any involvement in that, or whether that's the designer.
No, the designer, Ben Norland, absolutely amazing man. But I did pages and pages of hand lettering very, very early on in the project, and I've got pages of sketchbooks just working out what those typefaces would be. And then he took from those drawings and made an alphabet that he could then use in the speech bubbles and in the chapter headings. So they've all the hand lettering for me was really important to have my sense of. Again, it goes with the warmth. It's a small thing, but the warmth and the humour that Lucy's talking about. There's something about a hand lettered font that has more of a warmth to it than something that you can necessarily pull up from InDesign or from Word. So that was really important, both in historical context and in the newspapers and that feature later on in the stories, and in terms of the feel of the book overall.
I'm so glad you name-checked Ben Norland there. He comes up so often whenever there's a really beautifully designed book.
Yeah.
His name's there somewhere.
Yeah. It's been one of the... Working with Lucy is an absolute gift. The fact that I got to work with Ben Norland has been just a lifetime ambition, and I'm absolutely thrilled.
Can we talk about some of the illustrations? We've got a few up on screen. This is the first one that I wanted to talk about. The birds are really important here, aren't they? And the perspective is fantastic. Tell us about, putting this image together from your point of view.
I'm super excited by, in a kind of geeky way, by composition. I absolutely love it, and the way that you can guide the viewer's eye into the story through how you put an image together and how you structure it. So the birds in the sky are making a diagonal that take you down, and they're flying down towards the main characters. We've also got the pigeons on the ground that are leading us up, like a little arrow up to Lockett and Wilde there. So in that sense, we've got the road that curves round, so that from the foreground into the background, it's leading us in. And I needed, with the tonal values, to be able to do that so that the chap that's lurking in the background is dark against the light, whereas we have to have the ghost of Edgar be white and light against the dark of the bushes there. So it's that thing about using composition and tone both to help us navigate the story that Lucy wants us to read.
It's an absolutely amazing composition, and it's one that has more than one focal point in it, actually, because there's a sort of equal weight between that dark character and that light character, rather than just having one focal point in the image, and it works so well.
Thank you. Yes, I love this sense of building in stages at which you might read something, and also that sense of a stage setting for a story. For us, I mean, the fact that this is based in London is really key, and I really needed that sense of London to be at the fore, and there as a backdrop for the characters. So these big townhouses with these little gardens around them, which always make me think of Notting Hill, the movie. But that sense of having that structure around the characters to give them a grounding and a sense of place and space is really important.
I feel we could spend 45 minutes just talking about that picture. Let's have a look at something completely different. Tell us about this. Now, this is where we get that printing technique.
Yes, and again, as Lucy's mentioned, there's the colour is really important to the reading of the story. And I'm just going to reach for this image now. I can't find it. So the way that the images are made is that there would be I don't know if you can see this on screen. There would be a black and white version where I'm just working in pen and ink and paint, and then the yellow area is completely separate. So I'm just putting that on a light box and painting with emulsion paint where the yellow will go. You'll see that the yellow that I'm showing on screen here, holding up, is different from the one that got printed. So it doesn't really matter in terms of what colour I put down here, because the Ben and the printer will choose what that Pantone is of the yellow. But they are made as completely separate layers, as they would have been in offset printing, and then they're combined printed separately on separate drums.
Well, I think what I'm going to do is to give the screen to you for a little while, because I know people would be delighted to have a look inside your sketchbooks, and you don't need me to talk about your sketchbooks, but we do need to be able to see them. So I'm going to hand over to you for a little while.
Okay, thank you. So I suppose we are talking about Ghosts of London, but I did just want to just talk about the volume of work that goes into something that's very. I'm just going to get this straight on the screen. This whole sketchbook is an A4 sketchbook. You can see the hand lettering there. This whole sketchbook was just what I did to make that very early sample that we sent out to publishers. So in terms of establishing who we were, what the characters might look like, and it was a huge sort of investment in building that world. And most of what's in here, nobody will ever see. Nobody will ever see that Constantine that I've shown you. But it is a way in the sketchbook of two things. One is making mistakes and talking to myself on the page and trying to establish the characters early on. And once we began to get up and running with Lockett and Wilde, and we were working on the first book together, it then becomes much easier and swifter because I've drawn those characters hundreds of times over, so I then know who they are and how to draw them. I'm going to go that way. There we go. So a sketchbook for me is then the place where I'm getting to know new characters. So this is Reginald, and at the early stages of a project, I need to know that I can draw it, but also the rest of the team. So the Ben, the designer, Lucy, the editor, Lucy, Strange, everybody needs to be sure that my embodiment of those or ideas or visuals of the characters are what they also had in mind. And I'm drawing things over and over again to try and refine the character for myself, make something that echoes what Lucy has written and is something that I feel I can draw over and over again, and that reflects the humour and the range of emotions that might be needed. And there's lots of mistakes I will make in any sketchbook. I will make mistakes over and over and over again, and the majority of it will be abandoned. But it's a bit like having a conversation with myself before I have that conversation with the rest of the team. And I would then be showing this character to the team and not the preceding 20 or 30 drawings that I might have made to get to this point, and so on. So here we go. So there we are. So that sense of the sketchbook being a place to talk to myself and the rest of the team. And Lucy, was able to go, no, Pam, you haven't got this right. There's the hair isn't. The hair is a key to the plot. The hair isn't right. Is Reginald? Is the costume for Reginald enough? I mean, look at this page as a spread. It's so messy. And yet it's me working out compositions, as we've just talked about. It's me working out posture of the character, trying to make somebody float in the air and feel like an actor, as before I'm going in and working in tone to make them also look like a ghost. There's also pages in here where I will be working on those roughs in lots of detail and making the pencil drawings that I would then scan and send to the team, and I'll be uploading sketchbook pages of these drawings that then might be, if I just reach again for this, so when I've done, I would scan them out from my sketchbook and Ben would then be dropping them into an InDesign document. so that I get the PDF of them on the page, and I'm printing out this is my printout, which I then trace to make that final artwork. This is all made with emulsion paint, like you paint on walls, and then with acrylic ink on top with a dip pen. So actually they're quite heavy. These pages become quite heavy because they've got layers and layers of paint on them. So that whole process to get to here has gone through a lot of mess, a lot of mistakes, a lot of trial and error that people just won't get to see in the best possible way. But it becomes much quicker and much easier as time goes on, because I wasn't having in the second book to work out Matilda and Edgar, because I'd been doing that so much for the first book in those previous sketchbooks.
Can I just say, I'd like to say one thing from listening to Pam. Actually, I'd like to say two things. But firstly, I'd like to say I am in awe. I am in awe whenever I see Pam's sketchbooks. I am in awe of the work that she does to create each image. It is astounding, and I think she's an extraordinary artist. And also, I would like to say, the other thing I wanted to say was, she said I might say, oh, and the hair's not quite right. And I did say the hair was not quite right for that particular character. But I think 90% of the time, I see the rough drawings that Pam has created, and I'm not thinking, oh, that bit's not right, or that bit's not right. I think, oh, there you are. You've existed in my head for months, and now you're alive on a page. So that is generally, almost always, my response to Pam's drawings of the characters.
Thanks,
I wanted to ask you, the creation of a ghost in artwork, there must be different ways of doing that. And one of the things that I noticed that you've done is you create a little aura of white dots around your ghosts. How did that come about? Was it instinctive and you did that right at the beginning, or was there a lot of trial and error about how to make something look ghostly?
Yeah, actually, I in other sketchbooks you mentioned earlier a previous book of mine called The Hideaway. That is about ghosts coming alive on All Souls Eve, and actually I did a lot of work in those sketchbooks to work out how to use tonal value to make a ghost look like it's glowing from the background, and to work out what materials to use to do that, and how to use materials. So it has been a particular use of light and dark, which I can't tell you how excited I am about. I like composition and I like black and white and grey. I just find it so exciting. I can't tell you. It's a bit weird. But it's that thing about trying to work out just how to use very limited. I have a black and a white, and I have 3 shades of grey, and how to use those really limited materials to create this sense of something. And Lucy had written some really tricky bits where where ghosts are fading in and out, and you might be. She's really tested me, and so it has been quite a trial to work out how to do that. But
We've
yeah.
got some questions coming in, so I'm going to come to those in just 1 second. So thank you for putting the questions there. Lucy, can I just ask, we've heard how you suggested to Pam that the hair wasn't quite right, but have you changed any of your writing on the basis of what Pam has done in the illustration? Has it made you go back and rework anything?
I'm sure there's been a bit of back and forth, hasn't there? There has been things like, I think Colin, maybe in the early stages, we decided he was going to be a parakeet rather than a parrot. Yeah. What else has there been?
We're doing it at the moment with book 3, Lucy. It's that where the speech bubbles go, and adding in bits of text, speech that wouldn't have necessarily been the original document, but when you begin to see how the roughs are going on the page,
we definitely
we could add this speech bubble in, or we could change the composition of the page. So yes, you are adding bits in.
Where it works well is so exciting. It doesn't always work well, but where it does, it's just so exciting. Should we go to the questions from the audience? So Chris wants to know, this one I think is for you, Pam. Which other illustrators in your opinion, use black and white well for children?
Ooh.
Ana Juan is amazing. She's a Spanish, Italian illustrator, and I find her work, her black and white work, she has a book called The Promise, which I think is genius. And I although Isabel Arsenault, I mean, everybody loves her work at the moment, but I find her, I'm very jealous of her work. So those two are the ones that would immediately spring to mind as absolute heroes of mine.
Both European, interestingly enough. Both European, as it happens. Here's one I think might be for both of you. It's from Kelly, and she wants to know what your favourite ghost mystery story is. I don't know, Lucy. I always feel echoes of the classics in your work. I mean, you've got a Jekyll Street in this one as well.
Yeah. There are lots of these little odes to the Gothic genre that are in the books. Yes, so there's a Jekyll Street. There is Pam's done a Frankenstein movie poster on the wall in Matilda's bedroom. There's lots of these little nods to the Gothic genre. In terms of kind of favorite ghost stories, I suppose I go back to the Victorian era. So I like Charles Dickens' Signalman. I've always, "Oh, Whistle and I'll Come to You," I've always found to be one of the most chilling ghost stories ever written. Sort of moving into the 20th century, and not so much ghost story, but in terms of the Gothic flavour. Definitely, I love Daphne du Maurier's work and how she plays with like the psychology of characters and that kind of thing as well. Not so much of that in the Lockett and Wilde, but I love, and I've loved and taught Gothic fiction and ghost fiction for years and years, and it's kind of ingrained in me. It's in my bones and my blood, and so they're ideas that I love to play with. I find ghosts. Some people quite often ask me if I actually believe in ghosts, because I do write about them a lot. And I don't think I do, but I believe in the idea of ghosts, and I think it's so interesting that human culture has a need for this, whether it's, whether people believe in it or whether it's in their fiction, but this idea of something other and the spirit world beyond. I think it's fascinating, and it's so fun to play with in stories.
Just while we're on the Gothic and classics, can we just give a mention to your new abridged version of Frankenstein?
I've got one here, Nikki. Look. So this was with Walker as well. They're doing this lovely abridged classic series. So they've done what have we done here? I think a Pride and Prejudice by Tanya Lamman. And A.L. Kennedy's done Great Expectations. And Patrice, I think, did Patrice do Jane Eyre? Yes, I think she did. Patrice Lawrence did Jane Eyre. So it's part of this abridged classic series. And I was so made up. I was so chuffed to be asked to do Frankenstein, because it's a novel I've known and loved and taught for years and years and years. And to get your hands on it, what a thing. I was really intimidated by that at first, actually, because I was like, who am I to change Mary Shelley's words? But then I started approaching it more as an English teacher rather than as a writer, and that was the key. Because then I was like, well, how do I translate this for younger readers? What are the bits that we don't need? What are the bits that I'd be kind of skimming over? And once I started thinking of it in that way as an educator, the editing process was so straightforward. Actually, I knew instinctively which bits we needed, which bits we didn't need, and it was a brilliant thing to do, and so satisfying. And I learned a huge amount. I swear, I've become a better writer through editing other people's work. I think it teaches you something about being objective. I think probably
Abridgment is such a skill. I think when you listen to, say, Book at Bedtime on Radio 4, and how a good abridgment makes you feel like you haven't missed anything.
Yeah, I think
and
that's
yet
important.
You've missed huge chunks have been taken out to do that. It's such a skill. Pam, can I ask you the same question about your favourite ghost or mystery story?
Yeah, I think I'd have to go Tom's Midnight Garden,
Mm.
and also Alan Allberg's My Brother's Ghost,
Mm.
which is very small and a very short story, but brilliantly chilling. The combination of the chilling and the everyday, which is I really love. So
Mm.
those would be my two ghost stories.
And illustrated in black and white
Yes,
line.
Gillian Tyler, I think, did the
Mm.
most amazing cover for it, which is one of my favourite covers ever.
Fantastic. One more question. Have you ever been to a place that has stood out to you long after your visit, and has it inspired your work? I'm coming to you first this time, Pam.
Yeah, when I'm writing my own story ideas, they're always based on a place I've been. So when I wrote Thornhill, it was a house I had seen. And when I wrote The Hideaway, it's based on a real graveyard with the poem in it, with the pillbox in it. And it's places where quite often I'm out walking with the dog and my mind is on other things. And that's when creativity begins to, there's a space for things I'm seeing to percolate. So it's always about place for me.
Lucy, and you? You
Yeah,
write
it's
about
the
places so
same.
well.
Well, most of my, not all, but most of my stories begin with a real landscape. So the Island at the Edge of Night is inspired by the Hebrides Islands. Goes to Gosswater is inspired by the Lake District. Sisters of the Lost Marsh is inspired by the Romney Marsh near where I live in Kent. So for me, it's the setting is so much more than just a place where the plot happens. It's a character as much as the human characters are, and it's the world into which you're inviting your reader. And it's for me, it's so much also to do with the tone, the atmosphere, and I honestly think there are places that where you can sort of hear the whispers of the stories in the stones. You know, the places, characterful places, dramatic places, beautiful places, eerie, bleak places. You know, they whisper to us. I think that possible stories that you might be able to tell.
Well, I have pages of notes here, and I've hardly covered anything. So we really need a whole series
Yeah,
dedicated to your book. Maybe when book 3 comes out, we get to ask different questions and explore different aspects of the writing. In a moment, Lucy's going to read us out of the event. She's going to treat us to a second reading, and you really want to hang on to hear that because it's going to leave us on a cliffhanger. I would like to thank everybody that came along today, and thank you for your questions. Lucy, do you want to set up the reading before you read it? Tell us a bit about what you're going to read.
Yeah, so this happens a little bit later in the story, and Matilda and Edgar are at Divine's Emporium of Forgotten Treasures, which is a junk shop, and they are investigating because there has been a sinister, spooky voice coming from beneath the floorboards, and they are investigating. They are sleuthing. It was a trapdoor, right there beneath where the sofa had been standing. It was large and square, set into the polished floorboards with a metal rim around it. It had thick metal hinges and a rusty bolt. "Listen, Lockett," Edgar hissed, and his insubstantial hand clutched at Matilda's arm. A sound floated through the still air, a deep voice that made Matilda's skin prickle horribly. "No one, no one." Matilda looked at Edgar. Edgar looked at Matilda. "It's the voice from the phonograph recording," Edgar whispered. "And it's coming from down there," said Matilda, pointing at the trapdoor. Edgar nodded. "You'd better open it," he gulped. Matilda steeled herself. Then she crouched down, wiggled the rusty bolt back, and pulled up the trapdoor. It was heavy, and a mess of dust and dead spiders rained down as Matilda flipped it back and used a rusty hook screwed into the floor to prop it open. Matilda and Edgar stared into the square hole. A steep wooden staircase led down into the darkness below. "A dungeon," Edgar declared dramatically. "A cellar," Matilda replied, trying to keep a sensible grip on her thoughts. Edgar was not helping, and neither was the voice that drifted up from the darkness. No one, it said again. No one. You'd better go down there and have a look, Edgar hissed. Oh, I think you should lead the way, Sherlock, said Matilda. No, no, Edgar insisted. Ladies first. Matilda rolled her eyes. She took a box of matches from her pocket and a chipped candle holder from a nearby display of ornaments. It took her several goes to light the candle as her hands were shaking a bit. Then she swallowed and stepped down into the gloom.